Seconds before we rock and roll. Here we go.
And here we go.
It's the Benjamin Dixon Show.
Your mission, should you choose to accept it, is
Not merely peace in our time, but peace in all time.
I have no fear whatsoever of anybody or anything.
you think no one was watching?
Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere.
Your mission.
Suppose we go where no man has gone before.
To reclaim the American dream,
To be given the right of human beings to be afforded equal rights and equal opportunities.
It's the Benjamin Dixon Show. If you're hearing his voice, you're hearing the voice of reason.
You certainly come to the right place.
Yes, you've come to the right place. This is Hump Day Wednesday. It is beautiful outside in the city of Boston. I don't know what it looks like in your town, but I'm grateful that the snow has finally melted and the temperature is finally above freezing. It is Wednesday on the Benjamin Dixon Show, and I am your host, Benjamin Dixon. We are doing a few things differently today. I tried Periscope and I tried Meerkat, but I realized all I had to do was Google live events and a Google Hangout to get what I wanted. So I was trying to figure out which one was going to win, and I decided that Google Hangouts was going to win. And so this morning, I have a very special guest who's joining me to discuss some of the major things that are happening on not only in the news, but also, well, I guess all of it is in the news, but to a greater or lesser extent. We want to talk about with Reign of April from Twitter. If you're on Twitter, you know who she is. She's a mover and a shaker, so I'm grateful to have her here this morning. April, how are you this morning?
Good morning. I'm fantastic. How are you?
And April, I apologize. I can hear you loudly and clearly, but I didn't have the right button pressed. So just give us another greeting this morning. How are you?
Good morning. I'm fantastic. How are you?
I'm doing wonderful. I'm running about 6 machines at once, but when you live in the technology age, you have to be able to adapt. So I'm grateful for you joining us. Folks, if you don't know Reign of April, I don't know where you've been, but she is the creator, the brain trust behind Oscar So White. She's done a lot more than that, but I think that's one of the more recent things. And that spread throughout the internet. Everybody participated in it. I mean, there was some very amazing, comical, but very poignant things that came across because of that hashtag. She's also an attorney. She's a social media consultant. She's a content creator. She lives and creates on the intersection of race, politics, and pop culture. And that's exactly why we have her here today to participate in this Google Hangout, as well as Spreaker. You should be listening live. Either you're listening live at the BenjaminDixonShow.com, or you're on Spreaker.com, or you're watching live via YouTube. Wherever you are, I want to thank you for joining us this morning. We don't have a lot of time and so much to cover, so I'm going to skip with all the formalities, even though I just took about 5 minutes for formalities, but I'm going to dispense with them, and we're going to just get on with it. Have you guys, if you don't know about the feud between, and I want to take that back, not a feud. I'm going to use April's word, the kerfuffle between Michael Eric Dyson and Cornel West. It has been going on for some time now. Cornel West has said what he meant and said what he felt for many years without many people responding. And on Sunday night, or it was a Sunday afternoon, Michael Eric Dyson responded with about a 10,000 word treatise on the ghost of Cornel West. And that set the, I want to say, Black intellectual class, but it really spread a lot further than that. The ramifications, I mean, it really stretched all over the nation, particularly because these are two of the greatest minds. Now, there are others. There are other minds who are rival theirs in Black thought and in the political culture, but they are two men that I admire. If you look over my shoulder, I don't know if it's my right or your left, depending on where you're looking, you'll see I have a Cornel West book that I absolutely enjoy. And further down in my library outside, I have several Michael Eric Dyson books, and I'm amazed by both of them. But we have to discuss what is going on. So I don't know. What do you think, April? Should we give them some insight into what was said, some background, or should we just proceed thinking that everyone already knows? Because I think a lot of my listeners, they probably already know, especially because I dealt with it on Monday. Do you want to give a little background into it? And I'll let you start, and I'll just pick it up from there, and we'll rock and roll.
Sure. Well, what we do know is that Michael Eric Dyson was was the protege, I guess, for lack of a better term, of Cornel West for 30 years. And they have established a very significant and what seemed to be a close relationship between the two. I know that Cornel West wrote, letters of recommendation and got Dyson on in various places, for his profession. And recently, and when I say recently, I mean within the last 10 years, especially once President Obama, then candidate and Senator Obama, announced that he was going to run for president, Cornel West has been a very outspoken critic. And that's not to say that anybody is above criticism, but it seemed to get more personal after President Obama's win in 2008. And there's the, now infamous story of the fact that Cornel West, although he'd done several political stoops for then candidate Obama, did not receive inauguration tickets. So there seemed to be a little bit of bad blood there, and that sort of spilled over. And then we saw, there's a tangential, there's more going on with Tavis Smiley in the background, and the fact that Tavis Smiley was upset that President Obama did not announce his candidacy during the State of the Black Union. And so President Obama has been sort of critiqued, sometimes unfairly, but always very strongly by Cornel West. And then Cornel sort of broadened his basis of critique to others, including Melissa Harris Perry and Michael Eric Dyson. And so now, and that has been going on for the last couple of years, and it seemed that Dyson now has sort of said enough is enough, let me sort of defend myself, let me take you to task, about where you are in your scholarship, and that's what the piece was about, in part on Sunday.
Right, and I watched him on Mark Lamont Hill's show, Huffington Post Live, and he considered what he did a rhetorical clap back. And that's why I love Michael Eric Dyson. His way with words is so insightful and intelligent, yet so intentionally urban. And I just like I like the juxtaposition of rhetorical clap back. And that's essentially what he did. He said, enough is enough. I'm going to return fire. And so, not so that, so on Monday, I described this as sort of inside politics or inside baseball. It really gets into a lot of minutia between, unfortunately, it comes across as he said, between Tavis, between President Obama, between Dr. West, and between Dr. Dyson. And at the core of it is the criticism of President Obama, not only the criticism, but the motivation of the criticism. And I think that is where Michael Eric Dyson is coming from, the motivation, and not just the motivation, but the spirit of the criticism. Because there's a point that you can cross. There's a line that you can cross where it's no longer productive or constructive criticism, but it's just hate speech. And so, not to put you on blast, but so let me put myself on blast first before I put you on blast. I wrote several articles about Cornel West and I believe Noam Chomsky and their attacks on President Obama for not being as far left as they expected or that they wanted. And I became extremely disgusted with the amount of vitriol that was coming from Cornel West. The problem is I never really disagreed with his argument. I understood where he was coming from, but it crossed that point of almost no return when you insult a person to the point where they can't hear you. What do you think? What are your thoughts on that level of that line that he crossed, that I think he crossed?
I would agree with you on that. I think that the critique overall was sound, but it was the manner in which he critiqued, and at some point he always said, that he was coming from a place of love. And, there's nothing wrong with tough love. But again, I think he did cross that line, and then it became personal. I also think, though, that we could use these same phrases and words to talk about Dyson's critique of West. Just now that, that the critique is sound, this may be coming from a place of love, but it's crossed over into something more. It's crossed over into vitriol now. And, and for both of them, but I think even more so because it's more recent, we see with Dyson, I think this is also coming from a place of hurt. This sounded, it was a little high schoolish, you broke my heart. And so let me tell you all about it. And, and I want to make it sound like I'm being, above the fray, but I'm really not, and this was a relationship, this was a 30-year friendship, and it's gone now. And I get that, I understand, but this may not have been the best forum to do it.
So at some point, okay, let me take a step back, because you said something that was very illuminating. The fact that the same critique that, do you return fire with fire? And I am constantly struggling with this within myself. If I could bring it down to a micro level within myself, I really am not above getting in the mud with a person. I will come to you as you come to me. And if you come to me with respect, I will give you more respect. If you come to me as a troll, I will out troll you. That's just kind of my MO. That's the way I operate. And I've always avoided that. Let me say that's how I operate now. I always avoided that because you don't want to become the monster that you're trying to defeat. And once you said that we can critique Michael Eric Dyson's piece with the same structure framework that we are critiquing Cornel West, do you think that categorically, without question, do you think this article made Dyson the same monster that he was critiquing with regard to West?
I think it's very close. And I think that argument can be made. I think that his overall point, it was lost in the shuffle. So if you want to talk about the fact that Cornel West, has been deficient in his scholarship, that he hasn't published something on his own in the last 20 years, then that is an incredibly valid argument. If you want to talk about the fact that he is focused more on oratory than written prose, and that something is being lost there because, he's no longer perhaps able to translate his ideas to the page, I think that's an important argument that can be made. Right. But there was so much more of that was just solely emotional that that Dyson came off looking badly here, and some of the interviews that I've seen with him since then, you hear, you feel, you see the emotion, and that's fine. Again, this is a lost and broken relationship, but this man spent 9,000 words tearing down his mentor, and I think that literal space, the opportunity that he had could have been put to much better use, because I think what we really need to be talking about is 2016 and the fact that, as I said on Twitter, that President Obama has sort of become the Black person spokesperson, right? He speaks for all of Black America just because of his position. And that's for better or for worse. But come 2017, when he's gone, there's going to be a vacuum there. And so and the 2016 election is going to be very important for all people, but especially for people of color, and who is going to lead us? Of course, President Obama is going to back whomever the nominee is, but that may not be the best person, the best candidate for people of color. So why can we not hear, Dyson talking about what we're going to do in 2016, what the candidates need to be talking about with respect to Black Lives Matter, law enforcement brutality and killing of Black men and women, nearly every day, and why can't they get together, he, Dyson, and West, and whomever else, because they are both still very important voices in our community, to have that discussion as opposed to, he hurt me.
Could you compare that to, though, if I'm going to push back just kind of on a meta level, does he not have, and I know you're not saying this, but I've heard a lot of people say this through the Twitterverse, and I've heard a lot of people say this throughout on different platforms. Does Michael Eric Dyson not have the right? No, let me use his words. His words were better. He said it's not an either or, it's a both and, in the sense that he's capable of speaking to the larger issues, which he did in the New York Times, and he's capable of addressing this. Are we not sort of doing the same thing we complain about when people say, they try to tell us not to say Black Lives Matter, but to say all lives matter, in the sense that we are trying to say, Dyson, don't talk about this, you should talk about that? Do you see any parallels there? Or am I just reaching?
I don't see any parallels there. I think that, if you want to critique West, go ahead and critique him. I don't know that you need 9,000 words to do that. I don't know that you need to discuss everything that was discussed, to bring up the inauguration tickets once again, to bring up Tava Smiley once again. I don't know that all of that needs to be done right now, or that it needs to be done publicly. So I think that, he said what he needs to say, and we can move on. But, again, I think that he took too much space and too much time to really explore something that was clearly very deeply personal. So can he multitask? Absolutely. We all can. I just think that, this was not the place for that.
Okay. All right. So what we're going to do is, because for my radio listeners, I need to take a quick break. April, stay tight. We'll be right back after this. And when we come back, we're going to shift the conversation to the arguments themselves. They're two great men who are having a disagreement. We're going to let them have their disagreement. And we're going to move to the dissent, the critique of President Obama and the 2017-2016 election when we come back after this. This is the Benjamin Dixon Show. Folks on YouTube, you can still hear me. April, thank you so much for joining me. Everyone hold tight. It's only like I think it's like a 90-second commercial break. It's really short. We'll be right back after this.
When you're ready to lose weight, why count, track, and worry over every meal? Jenny Craig makes it simple. Just walk into a neighborhood Jenny Craig center or give us a call. You'll meet your dedicated personal consultant who helps you reach your goals. Together, you'll pick out delicious Jenny Craig foods that you'll love and design a menu that fits your life. And the best part is that you can get started losing weight right away. Don't wait any longer to take advantage of our best offer ever. Call 1-800-JENNY20 or visit jennycraig.com.
747.
This is the sound of salmonella gyrating on your undercooked chicken. And it looks like Mom might be taking it out a little early. Don't let salmonella get funky with your chicken. On average, 1 in 6 Americans will get a foodborne illness this year. So use a thermometer to cook each type of meat to the right temperature. Keep your family safe at foodsafety.gov. Brought to you by the USDA, HHS, and the Ad Council.
On the next episode of Recipes for Disaster.
I'm making beef sliders for my friend Sandy. Nana taught me to always pull meat off the grill early so it's extra juicy.
Use a food thermometer to ensure ground beef is 160 degrees, or you could make people really sick. Sandy didn't think twice about the slider she ate until yoga class, when a nasty case of food poisoning turned her downward-facing dog into upward-moving lunch. Watch Recipes for Disaster at foodsafety.gov and learn the steps Maria unwittingly leaves out. Brought to you by the USDA, HHS, and the Ad Council.
When I grow up, I want to be a new pair of blue jeans.
When I grow up, I want to be a kid's first computer.
I want to be a warm place on a
I want
cold
to be
day.
a football
I want to
stadium.
be a bike that races around the country.
I want to be a bench on a forest trail.
When I grow up, I don't want to be a piece of garbage. And if you recycle me, I won't be.
Give your garbage another life. Recycle. Learn how at iwanttoberecycled.org. Brought to you by Keep America Beautiful and the Ad Council.
Welcome back to the Benjamin Dixon Show. If you're hearing his voice, you're hearing the voice of reason.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. So I'm speaking with April Rain. You can find her on Twitter at Rain of April. And we're just discussing this kerfuffle, but we want to move past the kerfuffle because I don't want to speak out of school with regard to the two of them, because I admire both of them and they're not above critique, obviously, even from little old me. But I think what caught my attention the most was, as I read this article, I could not help but to think about whether or not Cornel West was right. Now, sometimes, and if I'm able to give Michael Eric Dyson a pass because his observations are right, even though it came off in the wrong spirit, can I do the same for Cornel West? And I'm asking myself that question because, you know, I used to get so upset with Cornel West because I think the effects, this is the only thing I'm fearful of when people have this level of critique and they've crossed the line into just vitriol. The effect is people who admire your opinion sometimes take that as a cue that the system is not worth participating in, and they back off. I've quite literally seen people in response to Michael Eric Dyson's recent post, and in response to, Cornel West comments over the years, quite literally say, that's why you shouldn't vote because it doesn't matter. And that's when, you know, I think I really lose it, because we are letting an intramural fight, a scrimmage, affect the larger game. Or what do you think about that, April?
I think that's exactly right. And that's why, you know, we have to walk that line very carefully. You know, I've heard the argument, well, if a Black president can't do that, you know, and can do whatever the issue is, you know, universal health care, you know, in the way that it, in a true way, you know, and be a complete and true liberal, then what possible chance do we have? And, you know, and this was our shot, right? President Obama was our one. And if he can't get it done, then it makes no sense to vote, you know, in 2016 and beyond, or that we need to send a message that, you know, we will only vote for somebody that's truly liberal, truly progressive, whatever word you want to use. And I think that's a problem. That's a huge problem that we need to address, because, you know, voting obviously is incredibly important, and you should vote for the person that most closely aligns with your views. And I think that Cornel West had some good points, but I think you also need to be mindful of who President Obama is, you know, who Barack Obama is, meaning that he has always been more of a centrist as opposed to a true liberal, you know, and he has some conservative type ideals. You know, I mean, look at his stance on, you know, on marriage equality. You know, it's only, you know, he came around to it, he warmed up to it, what have you. You know, he wasn't talking about same-sex marriage, you know, in 2007, 2008. And it's only recently that he's gotten strongly behind that. So I think that people evolve. And I also think that it's important to remember that it is politics. And to get things done, sometimes you have to, you know, fake right to go left, you know, to get things done. And it's only in, I think, recent times, because he's in his second term, because he doesn't need to, you know, win another election, that he can really do what he wants to do. And so we're seeing, you know, the most recent example, one of the most recent examples, you know, is his dealings with Cuba. I mean, never in my lifetime did I think that things would be softened up enough that, you know, we could actually start planning trips to Cuba, and there would be, you know, more stabilized relationships between the two countries. So I think that, you know, the critique is sound in the extent that perhaps he didn't do everything that we wanted, and he didn't do it fast enough. I get it, you know, but we also need to remember with that he's working with a Congress that has blocked him at every opportunity, and he's not a dictator. This is not a monarchy, and to get things done, he has to make some compromises, and not all of the compromises that he's made, have been beneficial to us, or have even, taken all of us to heart as best maybe they could have.
Yeah. So, contrary to popular belief, or at least 50% of the population, he is not a dictator, and he can only do what the people empower him to do by virtue of the representatives that they send to Congress. And I think that is my biggest thing. So I looked at this disagreement between Cornel West and Michael Eric Dyson, and let me put a pin there. Robin, I want you to pull up the YouTube link to Michael Eric Dyson at the State of the Black Union, when he called President Obama Pharaoh and not Moses. Pull that up. I didn't have that ready. Send that to me in an instant message, and I want to play it. I look at what happened between the two of them, and I think about the ramifications, or really the underlying question. The underlying question for me, as I read it, was, what type of progressives are we going to be? Because here's the thing. I honestly believe Michael Eric Dyson has a lot of points. He has a lot of valid points, with this caveat. Cornel West is a right to be upset with the performance of President Obama. However, President Obama can only do what we, the people, empower him to do. The state of progressivism in 2008 was not what it is now. 2008, we were timid. We were afraid of being called socialists. We were afraid of being called communists. And, that's why they came out. I mean, I think the right-wing propaganda machine was so effective that you had people running away from the label of liberal, and they were running away from the label of progressive. And so, to me, we got exactly what we looked like. We did not look like the strong liberals that we look today. Of course, there are always the outliers. You have those who are always outspoken. Bernie Sanders has always been Bernie Sanders. So in that regard, but they were the outliers. And I think now, as we move towards 2016, we have seen that we are tired of Democrats in name only, and not even Democrats, but liberals. I'm stealing directly from the Republican side, right? Liberals in name only. We want people who are not going to be afraid of protecting the key progressive ideals that have been embedded in our nation since FDR, protecting those and also expanding them, because we believe that progressivism works. That's my problem with this entire thing with Cornel West. Was you're critiquing the president, but the president is a reflection of us. Do you think, April, that if we were not as timid and afraid as we were in 2008 and sort of 2012, we started coming around? I think today that liberals are far more aggressive, and they have become hip to the right-wing propaganda machine, which is constantly trying to move the center of our politics to the right. And that's why we got a Bill Clinton. That's why we got a Barack Obama, who were just left of center. But when you have moved the center of politics so far to the right, President Obama and Bill Clinton start looking like Dwight Eisenhower Republicans. What do you think about that?
I absolutely agree with that. And I think that we have, the success of and the achievements of President Obama to thank for the fact that liberals and progressive have moved further, have swung the pendulum a little bit back to the left. And so that we won't necessarily, accept, a centrist, or someone who's really not talking about the social issues that are impacting people of color. And when we make that distinction, I think we need to think very long and hard about Hillary Clinton and whether she is going to be the progressive candidate that, we believe that we want and we need. And I'm not sure that the answer to that is yes. I wrote about Hillary recently for ebonymag.com, and asked whether she is ready for Black voters, and in fact, whether we are ready for her, whether she is the right candidate for us. You know, you mentioned Bernie Sanders. I think that Martin O'Malley is another, you know, the former governor of Maryland. You know, if you look at some of the recent stances he took right before he left office with respect to decriminalization of marijuana, you know, his stance on marriage equality, his stance on capital punishment, he may be more left. I believe he's more left of center than Hillary Clinton. And so if you're looking for a true liberal, a true progressive, you know, I think we need to widen the net and not necessarily immediately crown Hillary Clinton as the de facto nominee for 2016.
And that's all exactly what you said. That's exactly what I was thinking as I read this article. The article just jumped. I saw the argument, but I don't feel the need to wade in into two great men who are having a dispute. I like what Dr. Boyce Watkins said. He compared it to media pitting Biggie versus Pac. And, you know, we had two of the greatest at the time being pitted against each other for whatever reason, even if they had genuine beef. So I never really read the article in the sense of, oh, Dyson got Cornel, and you know, there were some zingers in there. I have to admit, I can't lie. When he I won't even repeat them because I don't want to inflame the situation more, but Dyson definitely eviscerated him. But as I read it, my eyes were on 2016. What does this say about us? Because now we have to ask ourselves the question, Cornel West critique of Melissa Harris Perry, Al Sharpton, and Michael Eric Dyson, it came from a very bitter place, but the observation was not, well, I think he was completely off with regard to Melissa Harris Perry, but I think he was trying to send a message to those of us, or those of them who are on MSNBC and who have been willing to bite their tongue with regard to true progressivism. I think that is the nicest way I could wrap up Cornel West's critique of the people on the periphery. You know, whereas his primary critique was against President Obama, but in terms of everyone else that he attacked, I think he saw them as part of the machine by virtue of their attachment with MSNBC. And so as I read the article and I thought about it from that perspective, and I tried to think from all different sides, the real question is, for me, what type of progressives are we going to be? Are we going to be the progressives that are just progressive enough to be palatable to enough conservative voters, because maybe we think we need to be palatable to them? But if we realize the machine that we're up against, we would not be afraid of being progressive and being liberal, because hell, they're fighting us for being damn near conservative. You know what I mean? They're fighting us for doing Obamacare, for instance, the Affordable Care Act. That was a piece of Republican conservative legislation with some tweaks, but they attacked it as if it was Mao. They attacked it as if it was Lenin. So my thing is, if we are going to be in this war with this ideological war with people who are hardliners and who will not accept even the conservative brand of progressive, why will we ever tiptoe around the fact of who we really are, which is liberal, because not just because we should be liberal, but because our policies have worked and they have worked better than conservatives. So that's my question. What type of progressives do we need to be for 2016? And then by virtue of that, can Hillary be that type of progressive, or will she just talk what we want to hear? What do you think?
Right. I think those are both really good questions. And part of my concern with this Dyson-West beef is who is going to step up and, you know, have these discussions with us. You know, I don't know necessarily that we need a leader anymore, you know, a leader, because we're not a monolith. You know, Black people, you know, are Democrats, progressives, independents, Republicans, and conservatives, and so on. You know, but I would like to see somebody, you know, tackling these issues. And, you know, again, I think West had some valid points, that when you've got the platform on MSNBC, when you've got your own show, you know, like Melissa Harris Perry and, you know, and Al Sharpton, and, you know, Dyson for a large extent, because he was sitting in for Ed on the Ed show. then you need to be critiquing everyone, both Democrats and Republicans. And I think that they did that. Perhaps they didn't do it as strongly as West wanted them to, but I think they all in their own way critiqued President Obama on various issues. And if we pivot to whether Hillary can be that kind of progressive, I don't know the answer. I'm not a big Hillary fan, so I should probably state my, my bias up front. I don't know whether she can. And I'm not sure that anyone can and win. Because, the question then, it's President Obama taught us this in 2008. It's a numbers game. It's not just saying the right things, it's saying the right things to the right people who are going to get out and vote. So it's not just that Hillary needs to court the very liberal, very progressive base. She also needs to court independents, and she also needs to court some Republican women.
Let me push back on that a little bit, and not that you're wrong on any measure, because I agree with you, but I think that is the underlying problem, is that we have been beaten in the ground game rhetorically, propagandistically, if I can just put that word together. Somebody look that up and see if that's a real propagandistically. We've been beat because we've allowed right-wing media to convince those groups, those independent voters, those Republican women, we've allowed them to convince them that liberalism is something that is bad, even though most of them are enjoying the fruits of liberalism. We've allowed Rush Limbaugh and Glenn Beck and Sean Hannity and all the rest of them to convince independents that it's really a clear choice and that both sides are the same. This false parallel, the false equivalency rather. And my thing is, if we as the troops on the ground and the people with a voice, if we don't start convincing people that our ideology is 100% better, that is not equivalent with conservatism, that it's not a flip of a coin, that our economic policies are better, historically proven, if we don't start speaking like that and convincing people, then we're going to get the same exact thing, because Hillary will do what Barack had to do. The Secretary of State will do what the president had to do, and that is the numbers game, and talk to people and convince them that they're moderate enough. And then we get a very moderate's not bad, but in this case, moderate has already been shifted to the right. And so we get this conservative style blue dog Democrat. When in actuality, the ideas on the left are genuinely better. So what do we do to convince the voter before Hillary even gets out there? What do we do to start changing the mind of the people so that when they hear liberal, they're not like, liberal, that's the worst thing in the world. What do you think?
It's a really good question. I'm not sure I have the answer to that. Something that I've said many, many times is that, the Republicans do a solidified message very well. They are loud and wrong, but they are all on the same page, and that's something that Democrats / progressive, I'm using the terms interchangeably now. That's something that we lack and we need to get better on. We need to say, we need to pick the social issues that are of most importance to us and push them, and say, we're not going to vote for you unless you're talking about Black Lives Matter. We're not going to vote for you unless, you're talking about decriminalization of marijuana in all 50 states, or we're talking about, marriage equality in all 50 states. If we're talking about comprehensive immigration reform in all 50 states, and these are the issues of importance to us. That's what we're going to be looking for from our candidates in 2016. And I think it's important that we get out there and do it early, because right now we only have Hillary in the race, so I think that as other candidates make their way toward the front and start throwing their hats into the ring, it's important for them to have policy issues and stances on those from the beginning. And let's remember, Hillary announced a week ago, 10 days ago, and we don't know what her policy issues are yet, what her framework is going to be. And so this is the time for us to get out there and say, these are the things that we need you to focus on, and we'll be listening. And, we realize that our votes are going to matter. It's anybody's game for 2016, right? On both sides of the aisle. And so these are the things that you need to focus on, or you're going to be left behind.
Absolutely. I may need to borrow you for about 15 extra minutes. We may need to go overtime because I want to spend some time talking about Jada Pinkett Smith's post on Facebook, which I think is so apropos for 2016 and with regard to the entire conversation of what type of progressives are we going to be. So I need to take a little break. If you have to go, don't worry, I can finish off and we'll get all the things that you want to say before we run out of time. But before I go, I want to play this clip of Michael Eric Dyson because it is absolutely my favorite clip, and this is where he's trying to help Black people and progressives in general understand who President Obama really is. So let's listen to this clip, and then we're going to go right to a commercial break. And when we come back, we'll be dealing with Jada Pinkett Smith and intersectionality.
I can't.
All right, folks, we'll be back after this break. This is the Benjamin Dixon Show.
You're tuned in to the Benjamin Dixon Show. Join the conversation, 857-600-0518.
Looking for the right business opportunity? Need the right product, the right marketing plan, and the absolute best training in the world? Well, look no further. The Elite Team. Every leader in time excels. They believe the key ingredients in becoming successful in life and in business are just a keystroke away. Go to www.eliteteamsite.com. That's www.eliteteamsite.com. The Elite Team has a system in place that will move you closer to achieving your goals and dreams. Visit www.eliteteamsite.com or TonyFlemingEnterprises.com today.
College is important, but it can also be expensive. College Planning Services is a group of educators, administrators, counselors, and other licensed professionals that work together to provide the necessary services, networks, and information to reach students that are serious about getting a college education. College Planning Services partners with financial institutions, corporate sponsors, and other major players in the global market to strategize in building a pool of information regarding financial aid, scholarships, and funding information to assist students in preparing to access the essential resources to build upon their path to an educational future. Learn more at collegeplanningtoday.com and let us help you start your college career.
Do you want to take your business to the next level? Ultimate Business Solutions provides the support you need to increase your customer base and sell more products and services online. Specializing in graphic arts, web development, and internet marketing, Ultimate Business Solutions creates the face of your business. If you're looking for a custom logo, dynamic website, or popping marketing material, call Ultimate Business Solutions today at 404-704-2197 or visit www.ultimatebizsolutions.com. Ultimate Business Solutions. Let us create your future.
Do you have tax issues, owe back taxes, or need tax relief? Contact L&B Tax Service today. L&B offers you over 15 years of expertise and first-class tax service for individuals, professionals, and business owners. With nationwide service, you can easily find a location near you. Contact one of our tax professionals through our website, lbtaxservice.com. That's www.lbtaxservice.com. L&B Tax Service Incorporated. Tax professionals that you can trust.
You've tuned in to the Benjamin Dixon Show.
All right. Now, in all fairness, I want to confess that the real reason I asked April here today was about Jada Pinkett Smith's post. And the reason I asked her here is because it was a post on intersectionality, the way of viewing feminism in the sense of not only are you a woman, but you're also a woman of color, that intersection. And then there's a third intersection where it can be not only are you a woman, but you're a woman of color and you're LGBTQ. So there are all sorts of intersections that are often erased. Now, the reason I'm stumbling over it, and is the same reason that I've asked April to come today, is because there's no need for me to become an expert on it when there are people out there who live it. And so I wanted to get her on here because when I read Jada Pinkett Smith's comments, it was, to me, I'm not overstating it, it was beautiful to me because she, to me, hit the nail on the head with regard to past concerns and current concerns and how we move forward. And so, April, I can read it for them. It's kind of long. Do you want to just summarize it or do you want me to read it? What do you prefer? And then I'll just turn it over to you.
We can go either way. I agree with what she said, and the fact that she calls herself a womanist and not a feminist, is very important. I mean, basically, she wrote this piece a little bit about Hillary and about politics, but also about what it means to be a Black woman, what it means to have to deal with feminism and how she self-identifies, and the distinctions that have been made between feminism and women and Black women who are feminists, because those two don't always get along. There's very often not an intersectionality, and there are reasons why some of us do not identify as feminists, although we support the tenets of true feminism, which is about equality for women, but because of the negativity that we've experienced at the hands of non-women of color feminists, we don't want to be associated with that group.
Let me read a segment of it, and I'm stretching my eyes here because it's on the screen back there, but I want to hear her words. Hillary, Race versus Gender is what it's titled. Hillary Clinton is running for president. When Hillary made her announcement, I was more confused and anxious than excited. Her announcement conjured many old hurts and scars. In the past, I have been criticized for suggesting that Black women extend our media platforms to white women in a way in which white women have made their strides to extend their media platform to us. But Hillary's announcement reminded me that the relationship between Black and white women on the political platform has been deeply complicated, disappointing, and painful. I'm going to stop there because my eyes, that's a little too far for me, but that just gives you a taste of the introduction, and I have it up on the screen. We'll share some links. If you haven't seen it and read it, I definitely think that you should, because it said a lot to me in the sense of how easy it is to this is not my phrase, and I still haven't found out the original author. I'm sure somebody will tweet me about it. It's so easy to erase those intersections and to assume that when you say women, that you're necessarily talking about all women, when the plight of women of color is uniquely different than the plight of white women. And then the plight of women of color who are LGBTQ is uniquely different than that of women of color, and then more uniquely different than that of white women. And so sometimes we blow right past those intersections. And I'm learning as I become, I'm not a natural, I don't even know what this means, a natural feminist, but I'm a person who has been willing to listen and to learn. And one of the things that I have to correct myself on a regular basis is not to blow past those intersections as if, because without acknowledging it, you get into if I can stretch that analogy, get into a head-on collision because you paid no attention to that intersection.
That's exactly right. And it's so important that we ensure that the lives and the voices of women of color are not erased, and we see that all too often. I mean, from a personal standpoint, I created the Oscar So White hashtag, right, back in January. And that was a huge thing. And it was all over the place and all over the TV. But, very often, people would send me links and, oh, did you realize you're on Good Morning America? Did you realize you're on this show or that show or in this article or that? And it would just say Twitter created this hashtag, as opposed to, it was very obvious and very easy to find me and, find out who the actual creator was. And so I was always very thankful to those people who said April Rain, the creator of, because it was, my work, and it was just a hashtag, but it led to a much deeper discussion. And so that's just really an easy example of how women of color are erased all too often in the media and, and also in politics. And so, Hillary and others are going to need not just women voters, but Black women voters, because we have always been on the forefront of, of change, both political and otherwise. We see that now in the Black Lives Movement, and the fact that those sisters are being erased way too often, when we have those discussions, and so that's going to be important. I really think, as you said, Jada hit the nail on the head, that, whoever is running really needs to ensure that they are talking about those intersections, the distinctions that need to be made for women of color. And then in addition, the distinctions that need to be made for queer women and LGBTQ women of color, and how there are distinct differences and, things that need to be taken into account when we have those discussions.
Absolutely. And that's why it was, transformative is not the right word, but it was reminiscent of my transformative moment with regard to, and actually even more so than just the statement, reading the comments that were underneath her statement. That reminded me of exactly why I was able to let go of my remaining misogyny. Now there are some residuals, and I have to correct myself often, and I'll just put that out there. So whenever I say something wrong, folks, God's still working on me, right? I'm getting better. But when I read the comments and I saw how some people got it, but so many people were intentionally obtuse, they just could not listen to what she was saying. And the first thing they said was, oh, it's the race card, it's this, and we shouldn't vote for people because of their race or for their gender, minimizing the accomplishments of women of color and women in general, saying that we would, so they were insulting and condescending in that way. But it reminded me of my transformative moment, which is pretty recent. I'm just going to be honest with you. I really was not on board with recognizing intersections. I didn't even know what it meant as back as recently as the Michael Brown incident. So I'm a new convert. Y'all, be patient with me. But once the Michael Brown incident happened, and not just the fact that he was killed, but the fact of the hyper militarization of our police cracking down on protest, and I saw how blind and intentionally deaf people were. Like, we were watching the same TV, and it wasn't conservatives. I understand conservatives ignoring it, not wanting to see it, and and saying that it's not true, right? But what got me and hurt me the most was when people who claim to be allies, they could not see it, and then they did not want to hear us. And then they wanted to tell me as a Black man what my experience in America is as a Black man, and they've never spent a damn day being a Black man in America. once I saw how that made me feel, transformation came, you know, and I realized, wait a minute, I have not been listening to women. I have not been listening to women of color. And I have been trying to tell women of color and women in general what their experience is and is not in the United States of America. And then it hit me like a ton of bricks. I have been the oppressor in this case because I've turned a blind eye and I've muted my ears and have not listened to people who I would otherwise consider an ally. And it's just amazing to me that there's so much more work to be done, not with convincing conservatives, but convincing people who ostensibly are our allies.
I think that's right. And I actually hate that word. I hate the word ally because I think that, you know, you cannot self-identify as an ally. You have to put in the work. Right. And then allow people to say, this person is my ally based on what he or she has done. That's where I am with it. You know, and the same way that you are having a transformation with respect to women, I am having a transformation with respect to LGBTQ issues. And I think everyone goes through that if they are not part of that group initially, you know, so white folks, you know, have that transformation with people of color, you know, male people of color have that transformation, or men in general have that transformation, hopefully with women, you know, and so on down the line. So we all are still learning and growing. But I think that the larger point that you make is sound, which is, you know, that those that will stand hand in hand with you on one particular issue may not fully grasp your struggle, you know, and you know, at some point, it's for us to lead them to the right way. But, you know, I'm nobody's teacher, and there's enough out there now on intersectionality, on race, on, you know, whatever issue that you feel deficient in, that you can, you know, do your Googles, as they say, and learn more, you know, about what you're lacking.
Yeah, and to be honest with you, I definitely understand. It's kind of like, you know, this class was in session 20 years ago, even probably longer than that. I don't even have the point of context to say when it started, but this class has been in session for a while, and so people who are late to class are just missed it all entirely. You know, it's up to them to get it. Thankfully, I had some friends, you know, who really saw value enough in me and felt it was a teachable moment enough and felt it within themselves to be willing to teach me, to really expose to me the fact that the same thing I complain about with regard to liberals who deny racism is the same exact thing that I was doing. And I think it has to be an experiential moment. I think you can Google until you're blue in the face, but if you're not willing to hear it, then you would never go Google it in the first place. I think, you know, once you have an experience that shows you that you have been blind, mute, and deaf with regard to issues that are pertinent to a person that you, I don't have a better word right now, April, but that you would consider an ally. You've been blind, mute, and deaf until you experience that. You won't ever Google it. And I remember clearly, it was the same time as the Mike Brown incident, but I was getting off of a train in Boston, and this guy asked me for a pen. And I was like, yeah, sure, whatever. Actually, I was waiting on a train, and I was like, here's a pen. And the train pulled up, and this woman got off, and I really didn't even notice her until that guy went from 0 to 100, went from, can I borrow your pen, to being like, hey, baby, oh, baby, them, yo, titties look great. Oh, baby, come over here. I'm like, bruh, how did you go from, hey, guy, can I borrow your pen, to this complete Neanderthal animal? And at that moment, I'm like, God, have I been blind with regard to this issue so long? And did it require me experiencing it firsthand, when all along, all I had to do was listen to other people telling me that this is real?
Right. And I think my concern is that not enough people are having those aha moments, as Oprah would call them, you know, that they haven't experienced it, and so they don't want to learn more. And so that's the question. For those people who are potential allies, for lack of a better word, you know, for those people that, you know, will walk hand in hand with us on other issues, how do we bring them along? Because it's exhausting. It's exhausting for women to have to say to men, we deal with street harassment, for example, every single day, and you need to step up and tell your brothers not to hit on us and just let us go on our merry way, or what have you, because that's where we need men to be allies to women, right? To say, bro, that's not cool. You can't, you shouldn't be doing things like that. So, but again, as you say, you need to have that moment where you're not participating with the guy. Oh yeah, she really does have a nice behind, or whatever the case may be. But instead, check him, and because unfortunately.
Well, now to be clear to the audience, to be clear to the audience, I did not participate. Right. However, I was so flabbergasted. I was in unbelief that my mouth just literally dropped, and I was in shock, and I snatched my pen back. That's what I did, but I did not correct him. But you're right. We need to go one step further and not stand idly by when we see this. And to tie this back into how this is so applicable to what Jada Pinkett Smith said, it's like Hillary. And not just Hillary, because I think Hillary is smart enough and understands that and has so much experience that she is probably, I believe that is clear. She should be at this point. But her supporters, it is very necessary for her supporters to not disregard the intersections and dismiss it as the race card, because in that case, you are just as venomous to us as conservatives.
That's exactly right. And you have more faith than I do, because I'm not sure that Hillary is making those connections just yet. And I mean, I haven't seen anything empirically to suggest that, and I think it'll be interesting to see who she has on her campaign team, and the types of messages that she's sending out. But, again, I will go back to 2007, 2008, which was a very bitter campaign, and if we're just talking about race issues there, some of the things that Hillary said about then candidate Obama, are still in the minds of many, potential Black voters come 2016. When Hillary was asked whether Barack Obama was a Muslim, she said, "Not as far as I know." I mean, as opposed to just dismissing it, there are some who will say that Hillary's camp was at the forefront of the birther campaign against President Obama. So the fact that she, that her group, in her campaign, her staff, her people, and even in some cases herself and her husband, have not necessarily always been allies, I guess, for people of color, specifically, Barack Obama. If you look at, some of the positions that Bill Clinton took when he was in office, they were not necessarily pro people of color. So I'm not sure that she's made that intersectionality connection there. And, and then so by default, it's not clear to me that she's done it for Black women specifically.
And if she hasn't, then I understand the fatigue. Nobody got time to teach her. I mean, this is 8 years later. We're not talking about 30 years ago. We're talking about, you have had 8 years of understanding the ramifications of your actions in 2008, which I absolutely love that clip when Barack said, when President Obama said, "I can't wait for you to work for me," and then she ended up working for him. I love that reality. Just me personally, that's my intersection. Here's something I want you to educate me on, and you may or may not have the answer on. Can intersectionality be applied outside of the realm of feminism? Can we apply it to the progressive movement as a whole? Because as a whole, we're progressives, but there's so many different intersections where we all have unique experiences. Or is it only applicable to feminism in that regard?
I think it can, because intersectionality is really making sure that you are taking into account all people that are at the table and making sure that everyone has a place at the table. So, for example, we can talk about intersectionality with respect to immigration reform, and we're not just talking about European immigrants, but obviously we're also talking about immigrants from Latin countries and Spanish-speaking countries. And so there needs to be an intersection there, and we also need to discuss, the distinctions between women women immigrants coming across the borders as opposed to male, and women having to make decisions about what to do with their children and where they should have their children, and and the problems that women are having with respect to sexual assault, in immigration issues. So it can be applied almost anywhere.
And here is an erased intersection that, since we can apply it outside of it, with regard to immigration, when we speak of immigration, 90%, I would say 99% of the world is talking about Hispanic, people of Hispanic descent, that form of integration. But very few people ever talk about immigrants from Haiti. People who are coming from African descent nations. Those experiences are totally different. And so I think it is important across the board the key word is empathy, but I'll come back to empathy in a minute, but to intentionally, and intentionally is the word, not dismiss someone else's experience. We cannot wait for people to always have an epiphanic moment like I had. You can have it simply by listening. And if people who want to consider themselves as allies and people who want us to vote and support their candidate, you need to listen. We can't wait till all, 150 million of us have an epiphany. We will be dead long before that. So the key word, and I got this from just 1 week, 2 weeks on Black Twitter, listening to some key people, Feminista Jones, and I cannot pronounce her name correctly, so please forgive me, Jamila Lemieux, and listening to them, and just 2 weeks on Black Twitter, I realized sometimes you just need to shut up and listen. And once you get that realization, the only way that you could shut up and listen is if you have a moment of humility and realize you cannot speak for everybody, you don't have all of the truth, and that you can listen and learn something from somebody else. And if you ever have that moment of humility, well, then you're open, and then you can hear people and you can understand their intersection without having to experience their intersection.
I think that's exactly right. I mean, the intersectionality to me is all about listening and learning, about what you don't know, and then applying that and helping to bring others along, and so it's important that you find the right people to listen to, and that, as you said, that you're open to listening, and so, as I said, it's concerning that if it has to be something experiential, if you have to have that moment for yourself, not everybody's going to have that when they're waiting for a train. And so how do you bring those people along? And, and I think that Twitter is a great forum for that, because there's so many voices out there, and you can find people talking about intersectionality or feminism or whatever it is, but you have to be willing to seek that out. And there has to be something in you that says, you know what, that's interesting. I need to learn more. Who can I follow? Who can I get with? Who can I discuss this with? To broaden my horizons and, make my experience more whole.
And so just a word to everyone that's ready for Hillary. And what I'm going to say here is definitely not necessarily endorsed by April Reign. So just credit this to me. I need everyone who wants us to be ready for Hillary to, I want you to read her article. I want you to read April Reign's article on ebony.com so that you can get some perspective. So I think that was a great piece, and I'll be sure to tweet it out. But also, it takes a lot to, and I'm changing my tone. I'm changing my tone before I even started, because I need them to hear us. I need you to hear us, and that's the operative phrase. Listen. As frustrated as you get when men try to mansplain, imagine how women of color get when you try to, I have no way of putting this, but when you try to explain to Black women, women of color, LGBTQ women, you try to explain to them what their experience is. Exactly, every feminist, every woman, every progressive woman knows exactly how angry you get when dudes like me don't hear you and we try to tell you, oh man, catcalling, you're just exaggerating, women catcall just as much as men. We try to make excuses. Don't do that. Don't do the same thing that you're frustrated with to other people, and take a minute to just hear what they have to say and realize this is the key thing. Unless you are something, you cannot tell that something what their experience is. I'll make it better. Unless you are a woman, you cannot tell a woman what their experience is. Unless you're a woman of color, you cannot tell a woman of color what their experience is, because it's uniquely different. Unless you're LGBTQ woman, you a woman of color, you cannot tell them what their experience is, because it's uniquely different. And I had to learn that the hard way. So please don't be intentionally obtuse like I was, just willfully blind, willfully ignorant, because I got so tired of white women conservatives trying to tell, and it wasn't, it was, and when I say that, I get it from men, but I got it so much more from white women conservatives in my social sphere. So I'm not being misogynistic there, but them telling me what my experience as a Black man was and wasn't. And I'm like, how the hell can you tell me what my experience is when you have not a single day in my shoes? With that being said, April, do you have anything you want to say before we get out of here? You gave me an extra 10 minutes and I really appreciate that.
No, I appreciate coming on today, you having me on, and I think it was a robust discussion. So thank you very much for having me.
My pleasure. We have to do it again. She was on the show previously, so I thank her for that. And I told her that once we do it again, that we definitely have to do some videos. So guys, this is on YouTube. We have a lot of listeners right now on Spreaker listening in and a lot of different places. So we want to share this and get this out and let a lot of people know that we need to start listening to each other, because 2016 is around the corner. And the only way we could be solidified against a totalitarian enemy, and yes, that's exactly how I see it. I see conservatism as a totalitarian enemy. We have to get this scrimmage done, and we have to understand how it is that we are going to work with each other. And the key operative word is listen to each other. April, thank you so much. This is the Benjamin Dixon Show, folks. Thanks for sticking out with me. We'll be here Friday at 7:30 a.m. Get up. I know you're already up, so listen when you go to work. This is the Benjamin Dixon Show. You guys have a great day.
And until that moment comes, when we, the Americans, are able to accept the fact that on that continent we are trying to forge a new identity for which we need each other, that I am not a ward of America. I am one of the people who built the country. Until this moment.
And we are brothers. It's not a question of Jews or Christians or Muslims. We're all in the same boat.
Which we need each other.
Love is a condition so powerful. It may be that which holds the stars in the firmament.
Until this moment.
Love.
Until this moment.
Love.
Until this moment.
I come to you today to say that we can build a newer and better nation. I say we can do so, that we must do so, and that we will do so.
You've tuned in to The Benjamin Dixon Show. Visit us online at www.thebenjamindixonshow.com.
And folks, if you're still here, I'm doing this for my producer, because I completely forgot to plug my own show. If you're still here and you're still listening in, we want you to go to the www.thebenjamindixonshow.com. We want you to follow us on Twitter at the BPD Show. If you like what we're doing and you think this word needs to get out and go further, join us at www.patreon.com/the BPD Show. We need to get the word out, because I think we got something kind of fire here. Personally, I think we're doing it at a level of I don't give a damn. That's the level that we're doing it at, and we'll always do it at. If you want somebody who's going to say what needs to be said and is not afraid of saying it, I'm your guy. No questions asked. So with all that being said, we just need to get the word out more so more people can hear us. We have a promotion coming up where we're going to give away some Amazon gift cards. We want you to tweet out this video. My producer put together a great video that got me hyped. It's a couple of clips of our show, the best of our show. So we're going to send all of that out, and we just need you to create our own little echo chamber and retweet it and share it. Get the word out. The Benjamin Dixon Show. I'm your boy, Benjamin Dixon. And of course,
oh my God, who the hell cares?
I do. We'll talk to you later, folks.